Welcome to Happily Ever After. I'm Jay.
And I'm Kate. And here we're working on turning the page after spousal loss. So, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. For those of you who are joining us after our last episode, welcome back. If you remember, I had the opportunity to share the story of how I became a widow last time. And Jay, I would love for you to tell our audience about your story and how you started your journey into widowhood.
Hey, definitely. I mean, it's interesting because your story, it's I thought that I was atypical. I thought that it was just me that this type of thing happened to. But listening to your story, I had so many similarities. And
Really?
yeah, it was it was crazy. Um, let me actually get in the story. And then as I start telling it, you'll start seeing some reflections. You know,
Tell me something.
now the first thing is that she started getting sick on Easter Day. And that
Mm.
was March 27th that year. And you know, at first she had done all the cooking and everything. So we were just like, maybe you're just, you know, hot from being in the kitchen type of thing. So I was like, lay down, no problem. And see, my wife is a school teacher. So
Hmm.
let me explain
Bless
something.
her heart.
I,
Ooh, hardworking lady.
and and on top of that, not only is she a hustle like that, but y'all know if anybody knows a school teachers, they will not tell you if they're sick. You
Hmm.
know, they're like Navy SEALs. For real. And
Right?
and it's like, so I knew that if she wasn't feeling good, if she said something to me, she wasn't feeling good.
Mm.
So it was like, I took her temperature and her temperature was elevated to like 102.
Ooh.
So I was like, all right, what we need to do is go to the hospital. So I live across the street from my mother-in-law. So I called my mother-in-law and I was like, listen, you know, me, you, Kim, let's go to the hospital. Kim's just, her temperature's high. So we get there and the hospital is only like 4 miles away. So, I was like, nothing major. We
Right.
get there. And what sucks is that because it's April, it's flu season. And then,
Ugh.
and the hospital was just crowded.
What year was this?
2016.
2016. Okay.
Yeah.
So like not even like a COVID
No,
crowded thing, just like
just
okay.
and so it was like, she had to wait. We waited like 2 hours.
Oh my God.
You know, finally we get there. And the triage nurse had been so used to hearing the symptoms of flu, you know, she was like, look, by the time she got to Kim, she was like, you probably just got the flu. Then Kim was like, no, let me explain something. I'm a school teacher. I took my flu shot and I took it 2 weeks ago. And she was
Yeah.
like, so now they're like, okay. So now the triage nurse is like, all right, let's do this, this, and that. So at that point, my mother-in-law and Kim, and I'm talking to Kim just like I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
You
She was
know,
cognizant
yeah.
and participatory.
And she was just like, she goes, do me a favor, give me your laptop. Because I was writing a thesis for, graduating another degree. And
Mhm.
so I gave it to her because she was like, I just need to send a message to the substitute because I'm not going to school tomorrow. I was like, all right. So,
That's how you know it's really bad if she's willing to like
right,
not go to school.
right. So I was
Because
like,
all the teachers I know, they would have been like signing themselves out of the hospital and been like, ain't no way I'm missing class tomorrow.
and that was the type of person she was, yo. Like for real, there were times
Mm.
where we would just be like, why don't you stay home? She was like, nah, I ain't staying home. Because first off, she was a kindergarten teacher. Because
Oh, bless her.
so, she was like, nah, man, I gotta be there for my babies. You know, but this
I get it.
day,
My daughter's going to be in kindergarten in the fall. Like,
so,
I can totally resonate with that.
I mean, but this, she wasn't feeling it. I could tell. And
Wow.
so it was like we stayed there at the hospital. They finally, you know, took a look at her and put her in one of them little like room.
Closet.
Yeah, pretty much closet like room. I mean, it was more like a tent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So my wife was like, "Look, the girls are home. Go home and make sure that they're all good and everything, and we'll call you when we get, when we're all good." Because
How old were the girls?
17 and 13 going on 14.
Okay, so like
So
still needed someone at home to kind of give a little
yeah,
guidance and
especially because my oldest one was one of those, you know what I'm saying?
teenagers.
Yeah. So
I
we
feel
had
you.
right. So we had to watch out for it. You know what I'm saying?
I still needed a little like supervision.
Right,
I
right.
got you. Okay.
And it was like, so I was like, all right, I'll go home. So I told my mother-in-law, I was like, look, anything happen, just give me a call. Let me know what's going on. So I go home and jump in the shower. It's the kids are asleep at this point because my niece was watching the girls. So I relieved her and was just like, I came home, jumped in the shower. I was like, you know what? Let me get some Z's for a little bit, see what's up. So I go to lay down. Yo, like 2 hours later, the phone rang. And next thing you know, it's my mother-in-law. For real. I mean, she was just not audible. I couldn't even hear what she was saying.
Oh
But the
my
only
God.
thing she said was, yo, Kim is in a coma. Come now. I heard that. That woke
Mm.
me hell up. I'm like, okay.
Which must have been like confusing because that's not how you left her. There was no
Right.
like you weren't headed in that direction when you left. Like
I
it's a
mean,
say what
I
situation.
literally, I literally just couldn't understand. You know what I'm saying? Because you're right. I was just like in shock. You know, but what I ended up doing was I called my neighbors. I'm real cool with them. It was like, look, I need you to watch the girls. Something happened to Kim. I got to go to the hospital. You know what I'm saying? So I said, I'll tell y'all what's going on when I know more. You know, get to the hospital. Now, it's funny how you said you were talking about you were like Mario Andretti. Let me explain something. A 4 mile ride must have
Mm.
took me 3 minutes.
Oh my
Seriously,
God.
because
We got another Andretti situation up
yeah,
in here.
I was flying.
Hashtag
Now,
NASCAR. Like,
I parked the car. I just parked it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't even care about where it was. I just parked it.
yeah. Well, you weren't thinking like everything
No.
was, oh my
Then
gosh.
I jump in, I go to the ER, and the triage nurse must have known, what was going on. Because that's why I said my wife, Kim, she's, something happened to her. And so the triage nurse automatically brings me back into this other room,
Oof.
this other place.
Yep.
And I go into this other room, and it's my mother-in-law. Yo,
Mm.
Kate, she was on the floor.
On the
And
floor?
yeah, because like crying, you know,
Mm.
and and all she was saying was like, my baby, my baby. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, where Kim at? Where's Kim? And all she could do was just point. She just pointed. Now,
Oh.
remember we was talking about the whole corridor situation? Let me
Yep.
explain something.
Walking down the longest hallway of
I
my friggin' life.
that shit was like, it was like
Slow
a mile
motion.
long. It was like a mile long. And I'm sitting there. And then when I get into this area, because it wasn't a room, it was an area. And I get to
Mm.
the area, and there is one of those um kind of clear tents that, eh,
Yeah.
they had her listed as infectious.
Oh, so she was in like a quarantine
Yeah, it was a quarantine
situation.
situation. And
That must have been terrifying.
it was, I I walk up and there's two nurses there. And one nurse says, I'm not going in there. I don't know what she's got. She hasn't seen me. The other nurse turned around and said, I think that's her husband. And so now I go up
Bet your
downstairs.
ass
I was
it
like,
is.
yeah. I was like, yeah. I was like, what's wrong? And then all of a sudden, I swear to you, like on cue, the doctor comes busting through the door.
Like
And he,
made for TV Hallmark movie, but like terrible.
man, this guy, he's like, well, I want to explain to you what happened to Kim, what's going on. And I said, yeah, I need you to explain what's going on. He said, well, she had she's had two heart attacks tonight. And so I said, what? I was like, what? He goes, and then her lung collapsed. And I was like,
Oh my God.
what? You know, then he says, well, through that, she was deprived of oxygen
Oh my God.
for about 10 minutes. And she's officially brain dead. I was like,
Oh,
what the hell do you mean she? And then he's like, she's got the flu and pneumonia.
she
And
had the flu though. I mean,
yeah.
the triage nurse was technically
And,
right, but
and
also like, what in the French toast?
so I'm like, so now you're telling me my wife, who I was just speaking to, has had two heart attacks, a lung collapse. She's brain dead. You know what I'm saying? And she's got the flu and pneumonia. All this has been in the time span of fucking 10 hours. Excuse my
Gee.
language. But I'm like, hold on. And then he goes, well, we can't take care of her here at this hospital. She needs to be on something called an ECMO machine. That was the
What's
first
that?
time. An ECMO machine, let me tell you, ECMO machines became real popular in COVID.
So it's like a ventilator?
It's more than a ventilator. It actually does the breathing. It does everything that the lungs will do while the lungs are healing. And so
Oh,
because her lungs collapsed, they were saying put her on this ECMO machine and let the ECMO machine help her with the breathing while the lungs heal. So I was like, okay. But that was the first time I heard ECMO,
yeah, I've never heard that
you
before.
know, and like I said, it became a popular term during COVID because it basically, if you weren't on a ventilator, you were on an ECMO machine.
Mm.
It was that type of thing. But so now I'm like, all right. Then he goes, well, there's one last thing. I said, what? He goes, we can't go fast. The hospital is like 20 miles away. He goes,
Okay.
we can't go fast. I was like, well, why not? We can't rush to get to there. He was like, because if
Mm.
we do, and anything happens on the way, or if they bump something wrong or whatever, she could die.
Yeah.
I was like,
Oh my God.
I was like, what do you mean she could die? And he was like, man, you know, she's really bad off. I was like, and mind you, this is the hospital we were at. This is one of the best hospitals in northern New Jersey.
I, I'm just like so flabbergasted, like how quickly everything went sideways. And like, you must have been so out of your mind because not only were you only gone for 10 hours to then come back and find this completely capsized situation and be told all of this super traumatic information, but then to have to continue that by going, okay, and now we're going to change locations. Also, like, there's a huge risk here. Like,
And
oh my God.
I mean, they load her into the ambulance, and I hop in the back of the ambulance because
Mm,
at this time you could just go in.
right,
So I'm in the ambulance, and we chilling, and all this is, like I said, this is all pre-COVID.
right.
So we have no idea now. Like, they recommended to me to go back home and to get bleach and to wash the walls down because
They
they
weren't sure if it wasn't infectious still,
right,
right?
they had no idea. So now what was interesting was that by the third day, they realized it wasn't infectious because me nor the kids had it. We, my mother-in-law, my wife cooked Easter dinner and nobody got sick,
Not even flu.
not even flu. And
Wow.
it's like, but see, my wife worked she, where she worked in a very prestigious type of area for schools.
Hmm.
And so a lot of the kids' parents were like CEOs and stuff. They were traveling places and stuff like that. And of course, when you're a kindergarten teacher, kids are always hugging you,
Oh yeah, and
that.
sneezing on you and
Right. So one of these kids could have been carrying something that maybe a parent
mm,
might have had. And it was like, and they were diagnosed, they were not diagnosed, they were trying to do everything to figure out what this was. They didn't have anything. One of the doctors said that it seems like she has some form of SARS.
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 Oh my
And which
God.
SARS, and what's interesting is what's interesting about SARS is it's a variate COVID is a variation of SARS.
It is?
Yes.
I don't feel like I knew that.
And it's
Look at
found,
that. You taught me two things today
found that out, and
the
it's
hard way.
and it's like, you know, so now all this is pre-COVID. We have no idea what's going
Yeah,
on.
there's no
And
context. This is like a horror
so
movie.
so now we get it there. And they were like, they have us in the waiting room, me and my mother-in-law, and
Mm,
Prep and Kim, and they were like, when she's okay, you could see her. Then, for real, Kate, it was almost like everybody was looking at me like I was the one who had injected with something to have SARS. My mother-in-law had this. First off, me and Kim we were on the outs. So, of course, things looked pretty bad. My
yeah.
mother-in-law, I think she had talked to a lot of her friends and my wife's friends. And so now everybody's looking at me crazy, you
Hmm.
know.
That was the
But,
last thing you needed with all of that was like then to be villainized.
but you know what, though? Here's what's crazy was that her birthday was like a week after she had gone to the hospital. And so I took the girls and we go in and we're singing happy birthday and all that. And slowly I started kind of like totally regretting everything that we were just not seeing eye to eye on.
Mm,
All I wanted was for her to be okay. Like, it didn't matter what had happened between us. Like, she was good people. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if like we had gotten divorced, we would still be friends because she was that cool. You know what I'm saying? We weren't, so, and the worst part about it is not being able to tell her,
Mm,
and then like having to see her so bad off. I mean, and she was bad. Let me explain something. Right? Kate, you saw my youngest daughter, and you were
yeah.
like, she's beautiful. My wife was beautiful like that.
Yeah, I know you told me that it's like copy paste, right?
What was bananas was, I swear to God, at the hospital, she looked like a freaking Simpsons character because
Oh,
things were she was so bad. And she had tubes all in her, and tubes and
yep.
stitches and everything. And I'm sitting there. And then they were like, you know, at this point, the other hospital obviously didn't talk to the hospital we were at because they made it go with the mask protocol and all this. They were like, well, in order to go into her room, you have to put all this stuff on. So I had to put it on like the top
Like a
thing,
gown and everything.
down, all that. So like, all right. So I get there, see her, and like I said, I'm with the girls because it's her birthday.
Hmm.
Worst thing in the world was the fact that you couldn't, you know, you're saying happy birthday. She's catatonic. You can't, you're saying happy birthday and all this stuff. The woman made it to her 44th birthday.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? And died a month and a half after that. And
mm,
so, I'm sitting there. Now, I end up going through a lot of craziness, like with my mother-in-law and everything, because first off, um, my wife was really clear years before she got sick.
mm.
Unfortunately, her sister had died from lupus,
Mm.
and she was on respirators, machines, you know,
So Kim's
for
mother had already seen that once before.
right. And Kim's mother was okay with keeping her alive like that. Kim was not. So,
Did her
Kim,
mother know that about her? Like, did Kim and
yes,
her mother ever talk about that?
yes. But her mother was one of those moms. Her mother was the definition of a helicopter mom.
Okay.
And of course, also with her losing her oldest,
Yeah.
you know, I could I in retrospect, I don't blame my mother-in-law. I really don't.
No,
Because
she
I'm
had
like,
some trauma. Like, she went through some shit.
right. I mean, she's lost two kids.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And it was just like I and I also had to understand where the directed hate came from. It had to look, this had to go out somewhere. And of course, at the time, I was the bad guy because me and Kim clearly weren't seeing eye to eye. But it was like, it was even crazier because the day before she was about to pass away,
Mm.
I had I had been driving Uber, just to kind of clear my mind. And hey, so extra money didn't hurt. But
Right.
and I was doing that when Kim was alive and well. But this particular night, like I had laid down and I was telling myself I'm just gonna go to sleep. But then all of a sudden, like 2 o'clock in the morning, I just got this, you have got to get up, go drive. I don't know what happened. So I
To go
called,
do Uber
yeah. I
at
was
like
like,
2 o'clock in the morning. You just needed to go drive.
yo, it was crazy.
Hmm.
So now I called my mother-in-law. My niece is across the street. I was like, "You come on over here. I gotta do this. I gotta do that." So I'm like, I'm not getting really any people. So I'm about to come home. Then all of a sudden I get this message. The pickup is here in the town where I lived at. And the drop off was 2 blocks from the hospital that
Ooh.
Kim was at. So now I'm like, okay. So I drop the person off and I go to the hospital. Now when I went to the hospital, for real, okay, I was livid, in shock, about to go wild.
What?
Because
What happened?
let me tell you, I go upstairs. Because at this time, they were letting family members in at any time of night. You know what I'm saying? So I go up, and when I went upstairs to go to her room, she was butt ass naked. The
What?
the bed was all the covers, the sheet totally removed.
Why?
There was only one charge nurse that night. And so the charge nurse's procedure was to strip the people
Oh no.
and then go back up.
I mean,
And
I'm no nurse, but that
so
can't be like
it wasn't.
standard procedure.
It clearly wasn't. And the
Oh,
whole thing was what pissed me off was see, Kim was the first one, which means she would have been the last one. And so now I go to the nurse's station. Something in my mind said, Jay, don't wild out. Because if
better
you
you than me because
do,
I would have lost it.
she don't. My mom was saying this. If you do, you may take care of it for tonight, but you have no idea what happens
Hmm.
if you're not there. And
Isn't it
some, if
funny how we have that clarity sometimes and we don't know where it comes from, but it's that like little voice in the back of our head that like checks us from time to time. Like it's why I called the lawyer shortly
right,
after Craig died. It's like I don't know why I thought to do that, but I did it because we have that little voice.
and it's like, and it's bananas because see, for real, Kate, under normal circumstances, you're right. I wilded out, but I was like, you know what? They have Kim's they have Kim's life in their hands.
Mm,
And and somebody out of spite, if they're willing to do what they just did, Lord knows what they'll do.
mm,
So, and finally, so I go to the nurse station. I'm like, yeah, what's the deal? Finally, the nurse on the floor comes and she's like, you know, well, I'm sorry, totally sorry. And you could tell she was genuinely apologetic because if she's like, I'm the only nurse on staff tonight, and which first off, you're in an infectious disease ward, you should have a minimum of 3 nurses, and the one nurse at the nurses station was just so nonchalant, like she just didn't care to the point where I was about to wild out and just go over. And
at least she was remorseful and like understood, and
this
it's not
one,
like it was like malicious or careless
right,
or
right. She was like, I just didn't know what I could do, and I had to do what I needed to do. Where honestly, it's 3 in the morning, and the other nurse who was the charge nurse, she really shouldn't have been just sitting there doing nothing.
right.
And it's like, yo, y'all ain't coming with no plan to handle this. I was like, but that's a whole different story. So now I end up, I'm sitting there with her and I'm talking, I'm praying. I am apologizing to this one
Mm,
because I'm like, yo, man, I'm mad sorry. that we were even the way we were. That things were just bananas.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at her and I'm like, I mean, at this point, let me explain something. She's in a full coma. She is on blood pressure pressures. They got her on fentanyl and Demerol for the pain.
Mm.
Still, they had a brain cap on her, even though there's nothing they could have done about it. You know what I'm saying? Now they did have the things for her legs to
The
the
compression cuffs.
compression cups. They had those. And so she had that. She had a catheter, full
In and pushing
dialysis,
and pulling and yep, like
crazy. And so now she was pretty much bionic. I mean,
mm,
she should not have been able to do the very next thing I'm going to tell you. And what I'm I mean, I'm crying, praying, apologizing, kiss her on the forehead. And I was just like, baby, you you are the best. She leans over to me. Shouldn't have been able to move at all.
yeah.
Leans over and she says 4 words. Now, you're brain dead.
Yeah.
How can you talk?
There's no words. Like
And
that's a miracle.
what she said, I'm sorry twice.
Oh God.
She said, I'm sorry. And the next day,
The same day, technically, because it was what, three
yeah,
in the
well,
morning?
yeah, and that evening, rather, it was I get a call from the doctor at like maybe around 4:30. And he's like, her blood pressure has crashed to a point where we just cannot bring it back up. Her death is imminent.
Mm.
He was like, call her family and her friends and let them know. So, okay. The doctor comes to me. Actually, let me back this up real quick because same thing. I had one of them brain fogs too. But um, a little bit before the day I actually did the Uber thing,
Hmm.
we were in the conference. It was me, the doctor, my mother-in-law, and one of my mother-in-law's friends. And the
Hmm.
doctor was saying that, you know, she's imminent. At any point, she could pass. She has, as a matter of fact, the doctor said she has like a 10% chance of life. And if she is alive, then she's going to be a vegetable for the rest of her life.
Hmm.
So now my mother-in-law was like, I don't care. I don't care. Because she was willing to keep her alive under any circumstance. And I had a different thought because I just didn't want to see Kim like that. I knew the person Kim was. She
Mm.
wasn't going to be happy, even if she had made it to be alive, incapacitated in some wheelchair or in some bed for the rest of her life. So I had the doctor hands me the DNR form. And I said, well, you know what? I'm not going to sign this unless something happens to her. If something else happens, then I'll sign the DNR.
And
My
just for our listeners, a DNR is a do not
do not
resuscitate.
resuscitate.
What
Right.
does that mean?
Well, do not resuscitate. It basically meant that if something was to happen, instead of them trying to do everything they can to bring her back to life, they're just going to let her go in that respect. And that's what the DNR is. A do not resuscitate simply means that if something is going to happen, instead of them trying to make rescue efforts, they will,
Gotcha.
you know, they'll just let that person go in peace. So my mother-in-law, on the other hand, was like, nope, nope. She and then she said she pretty much almost threatened me, like, don't you sign that form. And I was just like, wow. And so now the doctor says, as a matter of fact, it was crazy because my mother-in-law was like, well, you know, I'm her next of kin. I got this, I do that. And the doctor was like, no, you're not, man. He is. He
Hmm.
said, so now let me explain something. This woman went from the most vitriol person I ever met to a person as sweet as pie
Oh my God.
because she was just like, you know, don't kill my baby type of thing.
Oh, what a guilt trip. And like I get it, but still like
And it was
you have to
hard. It was,
carry that weight and make that decision. Oh my God.
and I was like, I didn't sign a paper, but I really didn't want to hurt Kim's mom. I did. But then also, I was really pissed off at the fact that all Kim's friends, they were okay with Kim being this. And I'm like,
Mm.
so now you're okay with holding her. She's a prisoner in her body.
Mm.
She's not the Kim we know, but you guys are okay with looking at some replica of Kim. I was like, I can't do that.
Well, and you knew what she wanted. She had been clear to you long before any of this ever started to unfold.
And
So
you know
you were
what?
honoring her wishes.
But you know what's crazy? Like a lot of people would just want some more, well, y'all probably gonna get divorced anyway. You probably just wanna. So now, like,
They said that to you?
oh, I even had people literally calling me like Dr. Gavorkian. I mean, it was crazy, Kate.
Oh my God.
So now I'm sitting there through now
After everything you've been through, watching your wife of how many years?
17 years, 26
Yeah.
years together, man.
Like after watching your partner, your life partner, your soulmate, your person of over 20 years, like watching them go through this thing and experience all these things, for them to come out and say that to you,
Because you know what?
that's some shit.
Listen, REM had a song called Everybody Hurts.
Mm.
And it's true. And you know what? It doesn't matter because everybody views pain through their own perspective. And so I end up actually, that's why I said I can't believe I didn't tell this part of the story. So I ended up going home. And when I went home, the girls went home.
Mm.
And I didn't have anybody to talk to. I mean, everybody was against me at this point. I didn't know what was going on.
Wow.
So I explained to the girls, I said, Mommy is probably not going to make it. And I said, but the doctors have asked me, do I want to keep working on her if something happens? My youngest daughter said, and she was 13 at the time, going on 14. She said, Daddy, we see what mommy looks like. He was like,
Mm.
she was like, if you think it's better to let her go, just let her go. And my older
Wow.
one said the same thing. And I was like, from the mouths of babes.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, because they understood. They were like, they didn't want to see their mother like that.
No.
And and I knew, like they knew how, like they knew all of the bad stuff that me and Kim were going through, but then they also saw my turnaround,
Mm.
and they were like, we remember, without saying it, like we remember
Yeah.
that we remember the relationships you and mommy had before
The love
got
and the
crazy,
spark and the connection.
you know. So so now I had confidence in me. Like, you know what? If nobody else understands, my babies understand. That's all that matters.
Right.
So now, fast forwarding, um, you know, the DNR, the doctor's asking about the DNR. And my mother-in-law's like, no. And I'm just like, if something happens, allow it to happen.
Mm.
So I get a call from the hospital, maybe around like about maybe 4 in the afternoon. And that's when the doctor's like, her blood pressure's crashed and
Mhm.
you can't bring it back up. She's going to pass. And they were like, he was like, call her family and friends and tell everybody to come down to the hospital so they could give their last respects.
Mm.
So I get there, we get there, and the girls, they didn't want to come. And I understood that,
I can appreciate that.
you know. So I was like, okay. And of course, everybody was like, where the girls at? And then it was like, I was a bad guy for not bringing the girls. And
I was gonna ask, are they talking at you sideways because you didn't bring them or tell them to come or make them come?
right. And it's like, now mind you, I am on one side holding her hands as tightly as I
Mm.
can. And everybody must have been 12 people on the other side, and they're all on the other side. And I mean, it was just crazy. And we were probably there for about maybe a good hour, hour and a half, until the flat line
Uh,
came, till she was officially dead. And so when the flat line alert comes on, everybody leaves, and I'm just the only person in there. And,
oh my God.
and it's just me. I'm crying. I'm holding her hand, and I'm just like, yo, where you at? Well, you supposed to be here,
Mm.
you know? And I was just like, man. And then I was like, damn, kid. I can't, because I used to always call her kid. I was like, you know, like, damn, kid, I can't believe you're gone,
Mm.
you know? And it's like, so now I'm like, all right, well, I had to realize that life totally was going to change.
Mm.
As far as I was concerned, I mean, it was the John and Kim show. It was a Jen and Kim show all day. And and like I said, once the fact that I had to understand that things change, friendships, relationships, circumstances, everything changes. And it took me some time. But the one thing I do realize is that that night before, that night before, we fell back in love again.
Hmm.
And it was crazy. But,
Beautiful.
I mean, hey, I,
You know what, John? I really want to thank you for sharing so transparently and being okay embracing the emotion. I feel like for a lot of men specifically, it's hard to like be okay being vulnerable and walking through these tough things and re-walking through them and allowing the emotion to come back up. And I know that there is going to be people out there who appreciate and feel seen and validated by your show of emotion. I know, like, I'm like choked up over here. And you're right. Like, there's so many parallels between what we both went through, but there is enough like difference where I go, holy crap, like my experience with Craig's passing was like 1 minute he was fine, the next minute he was dead. And I don't know that I could have walked the walk that you did by having to watch him be on a ventilator and be in that vegetative state for more than the maybe 10 minutes I did, which was traumatic enough, you know? So for you to have to experience it in that extended, almost like time suspension, it must have felt like time stopped and you were just in this really weird twilight zone for a couple of weeks, right? Versus having it happen so quickly where it's just a different processing.
and
One experience is not better than the other, but they're just different sides of the same
right,
coin.
right. And I mean, Kate, listen, it, um, whether it was like you said, whether it happened quickly or whether it happened over a time period, you know what? It's still painful, just a different way that it's painful, or
Yeah.
because it's like it's either the pain of it happening right then or the pain of a delayed reaction. Still pain.
Yeah.
You know
Like
what I'm
being drawn
saying?
out almost. It's
And,
yeah. And it's so funny because I remember so explicitly, you know, I resonate. I almost feel like I can picture that moment when you're just standing there with her holding her hand and that flat line in the background. Like I'm there. I don't know what the room looked like. I don't know specifically what she looked like. I don't know what you looked like then. Like I don't know anything, but I'm there in that moment. And I think about my own moment with Craig and they didn't leave the flat line on with him, but that just what the fuck am I supposed to do now feeling?
that
That just like emptiness and you're like free falling into this abyss, knowing full well that your whole life is about to be completely turned on its head, but still trying to understand and process reality in the moment. Like time as it exists now just didn't make sense.
it was bananas because what really pissed me off was the fact that they kept the flat line alert on
Mm.
for like, I mean, I literally had to go to the nurse station, was like, can you turn this off?
Oh
And
my
she,
God, you had to leave her and go ask them to turn it
yes,
off?
yes, because it was like, yo,
Oh,
you know, and so finally the nurse came in and turned it off. But I was just like, Jesus, to be so desensitized
mm.
that you're not even hearing a flatline signal like that. And it was loud.
Well, there should have been some sort of like alert or something at the nurse's station. Like I've had a number of medical procedures and I have an IV, and if it gets occluded, like the thing beeps, but it lets them know at the nurse's station, you know, like there should have been somebody
And
should have, maybe they were trying to give you your privacy, but like,
you know what?
holy shit.
I don't even know what the situation was. And honestly, after a while, I just didn't care. The worst part for me, not, I mean, well, that was the worst part.
I know
Well,
what you mean.
but a crazy part about it was the fact that I had to go home and tell the girls.
Yep.
And I was just, I never forget. I was in the car And I was in my driveway. It must have been
Mm,
15 minutes before I decided that I was going to get out and go in the house and tell them because
yeah.
things were just so crazy, Kate, that I didn't I couldn't fully register it that you
Yeah.
were gone, you know, and now having to tell the girls that their mother's gone when in your
Yep.
mind you still don't fully fathom it, you know. It was
Yep.
just
I'm a parent too. I get it. I got home maybe 20 minutes before my son did from school. So like I had just gotten home and then he came home and he didn't know anything had happened and having to be like, baby, come here and tell him like, if the girls having that weight of that anticipation and then finally getting that confirmation, that must have been so hard for them too. So
and it was and the other thing was, I mean, I was seriously praying that my mother-in-law did not
tell them.
take the malicious route and tell them. And because,
Well,
and
grief is a
she
funny
did,
thing. Like it makes people behave in bizarre ways. That
right.
makes perfect sense to me. But
I
we'll
mean,
definitely dive into the whole parenting topic in one of our
yeah,
future episodes. I'm so,
I,
fortunate and honored that you shared your story with me. Um,
I
we
appreciate
are
it.
coming to the end of our time today, and I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in to today's show.
Well, like I said, we just basically want to thank you all for listening. Seriously. My name is Jay, and until next time,
And I'm Kate with Grief and Gratitude. Thanks for listening.
have a good one.
You've been listening to Happily Never After, part of the Exvadio podcast network. You can catch every episode of Happily Never After, as well as the rest of the network, at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.